The gunshot echoed across the plains, silencing the saloon for a heartbeat before chaos erupted. Olivia Parker ducked behind the bar, her heart pounding against her corset as splinters of wood rained down around her. She hadn't been in Redemption Creek a full day before finding herself in the middle of a shootout, and already she was questioning every life choice that had led her to this God-forsaken corner of Wyoming Territory in 1876. "Stay down, madam." A deep voice commanded as a tall figure vaulted over the bar, landing beside her with surprising grace for a man his size. His eyes, the color of a summer storm, met hers briefly before he peered over the edge of the bar. "When I say run, you make for that back door and don't look back." Olivia's hands trembled as she gathered her skirts. "Who are you?" The man tipped his worn Stetson, a quick ghost of a smile crossing his face. "Elijah Wade, at your service. Now get ready." Another shot rang out, shattering bottles above their heads. Elijah returned fire with deadly precision, dropping one of the attackers. "Run!" he shouted, providing cover as Olivia scrambled to her feet. She bolted for the door, the sound of breaking glass and gunfire chasing her into the alleyway. The late afternoon sun momentarily blinded her as she emerged from the dim saloon. She hesitated, unsure which direction to flee when a strong hand caught her elbow. "This way," Elijah urged, guiding her down the narrow passage. Those weren't just ordinary troublemakers, they're Thorne's men. "Who's Thorne?" Olivia gasped, struggling to keep up with Elijah's long strides. "Man who thinks he owns this town." Elijah pulled her behind a stack of crates as hoofbeats thundered past the alley entrance. "And he doesn't take kindly to strangers asking questions." Olivia's eyes widened. "How did you know I was asking questions?" Elijah's weathered face softened slightly. "Small town, madam. Word travels faster than telegraph wire." He studied her for a moment. "Now what's a proper lady like yourself doing in a place like Redemption Creek, asking about the old Wallace property?" She straightened her spine, brushing dust from her traveling dress. "That's my business, Mr. Wade. It became my business when Thorne's men started shooting up the place on account of you." He checked his revolver before tucking it back into its holster. "You got somewhere safe to stay." Olivia hesitated. The small room she'd rented above the general store suddenly didn't seem very secure. I'm not certain anymore," Elijah sighed, removing his hat to run a hand through his dark hair. "I've got a place outside town, not much, but it's safe." He replaced his hat, his expression unreadable. "You can stay there while you figure out your next move." "With you, a stranger?" Olivia balked. "That would hardly be proper." A wry smile crossed his face. "Madam, propriety went out the window the moment you stepped into Redemption Creek alone. Besides, I'll be in the barn." He glanced toward the street where Thorne's men were regrouping. "Your choice: risk Thorne finding you or trust me." Olivia swallowed hard, weighing her options. She'd come too far to turn back now. Her brother's last letter had led her here, and she wouldn't leave until she discovered what had happened to him. "Very well, Mr. Wade. Lead the way." Elijah nodded, whistling softly. Two horses trotted from behind the livery stable, a magnificent chestnut stallion and a dappled mare. "Hope you can ride, Miss Parker, Olivia Parker." She gathered her skirts and approached the mare. "And yes, Mr. Wade, I can ride." Elijah's eyebrows rose in surprise as she mounted with practiced ease. "Well then, Miss Parker, we'd best make tracks before sunset." As they rode out of town, Olivia cast a glance over her shoulder at Redemption Creek, a dusty collection of buildings surrounded by the vast Wyoming wilderness. She'd come searching for answers about her brother's disappearance, but she hadn't expected to find trouble so quickly. "Keep close," Elijah called over his shoulder. "It's about an hour's ride." They rode in silence, the rhythm of hoofbeats and the creaking of saddle leather the only sounds accompanying them across the rolling landscape. The sunset painted the sky in spectacular shades of orange and purple, silhouetting the distant mountains. "It's beautiful," Olivia murmured, almost to herself. Elijah glanced back at her. "That it is, one of the reasons I stay despite the troubles." His small homestead appeared on the horizon as the last light faded, a modest cabin with a barn and corral, nestled against a stand of cottonwoods beside a creek. Smoke curled from the chimney, which made Olivia frown in confusion. "I thought you lived alone," she said cautiously. "I do." Elijah tensed, drawing his revolver. "Stay behind me." They approached slowly, and Elijah relaxed when a weathered old man stepped onto the porch. "It's just Samuel," he explained. "My neighbor keeps an eye on the place when I'm in town." Samuel waved, his leathery face breaking into a grin. "Brought company, I see. About time, Elijah." Olivia felt her cheeks warm as Elijah dismounted and helped her down from her horse. His hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary, and their eyes met briefly before he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Samuel, this is Miss Parker. She needs a safe place to stay for a while. Miss Parker, Samuel Blackwood, finest tracker this side of the Rockies and the worst cook you'll ever meet." Samuel laughed, tipping his hat to Olivia. "Pleasure, madam. Don't you worry, Elijah here is the most honorable man in these parts." "You're in good hands." "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood." Olivia smiled, finding comfort in the old man's warm demeanor. "Got some stew on," Samuel said, heading back inside. "Figured you'd be hungry after town." Elijah led the horses to the barn while Olivia followed Samuel into the cabin. It was simple but clean, with a main room containing a table, chairs, and a stone fireplace. A curtained doorway presumably led to a bedroom. "So what brings you to our little corner of nowhere?" Samuel asked, stirring the pot hanging over the fire. Olivia hesitated. "I'm looking for my brother, Edward. He was surveying land for the railroad when his letters stopped coming 6 months ago. His last correspondence mentioned Redemption Creek." Samuel's stirring slowed. "Parker, was your brother tall, bookish fellow, spectacles?" Hope flared in Olivia's chest. "Yes, you've seen him. Last summer," Samuel confirmed. "Stayed in town a spell, asking about old land claims and water rights. Smart young man." "Do you know what happened to him?" Samuel exchanged a look with Elijah, who had just entered the cabin. Something unspoken passed between them. "He had some disagreement with Vernon Thorne," Elijah said carefully. "Most folks who cross Thorne end up leaving town suddenly, or not at all." Olivia's blood ran cold. "Are you saying this Thorne might have?" She couldn't finish the thought. "I'm saying your brother made enemies," Elijah replied. "And now it seems you have too, just by asking about him." Samuel ladled stew into bowls, the momentary tension broken by domestic routine. Eat first, worry later. The meal passed with lighter conversation as Samuel regaled Olivia with tales of the territory's early days. Elijah remained quiet, watching her with an intensity that made her simultaneously uncomfortable and intrigued. After dinner, Samuel took his leave, promising to return the next day. Elijah showed Olivia to the bedroom. "You'll sleep here," he said. "I'll take the main room." "I can't put you out of your bed," Olivia protested. "You're not. I usually sleep by the fire anyway." He gathered extra blankets from a trunk. "Rest well, Miss Parker. Tomorrow we'll figure out how to find answers about your brother without getting you shot." Alone in his room, Olivia took stock of her situation. The bed was surprisingly comfortable, with a handmade quilt that smelled of cedar and sunshine. Personal touches were few. A book of poetry on the bedside table, a carefully preserved photograph of a woman and young boy, a pressed wildflower bookmark. These small glimpses into Elijah Wade's life softened her wariness. Despite his rough exterior, there was gentleness in how he had arranged the room for her comfort. She changed into her nightgown, her thoughts a tangle of worry for Edward and curiosity about the cowboy who had risked his life for a stranger. Sleep claimed her eventually, but her dreams were troubled by gunshots and shadowy figures pursuing her across endless prairie. She woke to the aroma of coffee and the sound of quiet movement. Dawn light filtered through the window as she dressed hastily. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Elijah at the stove, his back to her. "Good morning," she said softly. He turned, coffee pot in hand. "Morning, hope you slept well." "Better than expected," she admitted. "Thank you for your hospitality," Elijah nodded, pouring coffee into 2 cups. "Thought we might ride to the Wallace property today. It's where your brother was staying, according to Samuel." Olivia accepted the cup gratefully. "You'd help me look for him?" "Why?" Elijah stared into his coffee. "Let's just say I understand what it's like to lose family and not know what happened." His gaze flicked to the photograph she'd noticed in his bedroom. "Your wife and son," she asked gently. Pain flashed across his face. "Sister and nephew, influenza took them 3 years ago. I was away, couldn't get back in time." He shook off the memory. "Eat something, we've got a long ride ahead." They set out after breakfast, the morning cool and clear. Olivia had changed into her riding clothes split skirts that had scandalized Boston society but proved practical for her journey west. "You ride well," Elijah observed as they cantered across a meadow. "Not what I expected from an Eastern lady," Olivia smiled. "My father raised racehorses. He taught me to ride before I could walk properly. I'm more comfortable in a saddle than at a tea party." "What does your husband think of that?" Elijah asked, his tone carefully casual. "I'm not married, Mr. Wade." She met his gaze directly. "I was engaged once, but he didn't appreciate a woman with opinions, or one who wanted to chase after her missing brother rather than plan a wedding." Something like approval flickered in Elijah's eyes. "His loss." They rode in companionable silence, the vast landscape unfolding around them. Olivia found herself studying Elijah when he wasn't looking, the straight line of his shoulders, the way his hands handled the reins with gentle confidence, the profile that could have been carved from the weathered rocks that dotted the plains. By midday, they reached a small, abandoned homestead nestled in a valley. A creek gurgled nearby, and the remains of a garden could still be seen beside the dilapidated cabin. "This is the Wallace place," Elijah said, dismounting. "Old man Wallace died years back. Your brother stayed here while doing his survey work." Olivia slid from her saddle, approaching the cabin cautiously. The door hung askew on its hinges, and dust coated everything inside. She stepped through the doorway, blinking as her eyes adjusted to the dimness. "Edward was always organized," she murmured, scanning the jumble of furniture. "This disarray, someone searched this place." Elijah examined the floor. "Tracks are old, no one's been here in months." They methodically went through the cabin's contents. Under a loose floorboard, Elijah discovered a tin box containing surveyor's maps and a journal. "Olivia," he called, "you might want to see this." She knelt beside him, their shoulders touching as she reached for her brother's journal. The familiar handwriting brought tears to her eyes. "These are his notes about the railroad survey," she said, turning pages carefully. "And look, he mentions water rights and mineral deposits." She paused at an entry dated shortly before his last letter home. "He discovered something. Listen to this. The proposed route would bypass Thorne's holdings entirely. The alternative passage through Blackwater Canyon would reduce construction costs significantly and make several homesteads potentially valuable for development. T won't be pleased when this report reaches Denver." Elijah frowned. Thorne's been buying up land cheap, forcing smallholders out. If the railroad bypassed his properties, he'd lose everything he's been working for, Olivia finished, a motive for silencing Edward. "We should take these and go," Elijah said, suddenly alert. "If Thorne's men find us here," the crack of a rifle interrupted him. A bullet splintered the doorframe inches from Olivia's head. "Too late," Elijah muttered, drawing his revolver. Out the back now, clutching the journal to her chest, Olivia scrambled toward the rear of the cabin. Elijah fired several shots through the front window, providing cover as she pushed through the sagging back door. 3 riders were approaching from the east. Elijah joined her, grabbing her hand. "To the creek. We can lose them in the cottonwoods." They ran, bullets kicking up dirt around them. Their horses, spooked by the gunfire, had bolted, leaving them on foot. They splashed through the shallow creek, weaving through the trees until they came to a small bluff. "Up here," Elijah directed, helping Olivia climb. At the top, they found a small cave in the rock face. Inside. They pressed into the shallow cavity, Elijah positioning himself at the entrance, gun ready. Olivia tried to control her ragged breathing as hoofbeats approached, then slowed. "They're searching the creek," Elijah whispered. "Stay absolutely still." Minutes stretched like hours as they listened to Thorne's men combing the area. Olivia was acutely aware of Elijah's body shielding hers, the warmth of him a contrast to the cool stone at her back. "Wade," a voice called out, "we know you're here. Give us the girl and whatever you found, and maybe Thorne will let you live." Elijah didn't respond, his body tense and ready. You think Thorne doesn't know it was you who helped the Parker girl, the voice continued. He's offering good money for both your hides now. Footsteps crunched on gravel below their hiding place. Elijah's finger tightened on the trigger. A whistle sounded in the distance, 3 short notes followed by a long one. That's Samuel, Elijah breathed. Cavalry's coming. Sure enough, the sound of approaching riders caused Thorne's men to retreat. Soon, Samuel appeared at the base of the bluff with 2 other men. All clear, Elijah, he called. Scared him off for now, they emerged from hiding, Olivia's legs unsteady with relief. Elijah kept a steadying hand at her elbow as they descended to meet Samuel. Sheriff Wilson, Elijah nodded to one of the men, didn't expect to see you this far out of town. The sheriff, a barrel-chested man with a graying mustache, dismounted. Samuel fetched me, said you might need help. His eyes fell on Olivia. This must be the Parker girl everyone's talking about. Olivia Parker, she introduced herself. I'm looking for my brother. Edward Parker, the sheriff's expression darkened, been wondering when someone would come asking about him. Hope and dread warred in Olivia's chest. You knew him. He came to me with concerns about Thorne's land dealings, Wilson explained. Wanted to file a report. Next day he was gone. His horse was found wandering near Blackwater Canyon, but no sign of him. Did you investigate? Olivia demanded, anger rising. As much as I could. Thorne's got half the county in his pocket. The sheriff looked genuinely regretful. But I never believed the story that your brother just rode off. Elijah held up the journal. We found this. Evidence that Edward discovered something that would have ruined Thorne's plans for the railroad. The sheriff studied the journal, nodding slowly. This might be enough to get the federal marshal involved. I've been trying to build a case against Thorne for years. We need to get you both somewhere safe, Samuel interjected. Thorne won't stop coming. We can take her to my sister's place in Clearwater, the sheriff suggested. Thorne has no reach there, Elijah shook his head. Too far, Thorne's men will be watching the roads. He turned to Olivia. We'll go to the old mining cabin in the high country. No one knows about it except Samuel and me. Night was falling as they made their plans. The sheriff would take the journal to telegraph the federal marshal, while Samuel would spread false information about Olivia heading east. What if Edward is still alive? Olivia asked as they prepared to part ways. If Thorne took him, if he's alive, the marshal's investigation will find him, the sheriff assured her. But Miss Parker, it's been 6 months. I don't want to give you false hope. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back. Hope is all I have left, Sheriff. Elijah had recovered their horses, which had fortunately not strayed far. As they mounted up, he studied the darkening sky. We need to make the high country before full dark. Stay close. They rode hard, the terrain growing steeper and more rugged. Olivia's muscles ached, but she pressed on without complaint. The stars emerged one by one, brilliant in the clear mountain air. Almost there, Elijah called back to her. Just beyond that ridge. The cabin was small but sturdy, built of logs and stone against the side of a mountain. A clear spring bubbled nearby, and a natural meadow provided grazing for their horses. Inside, Elijah quickly built a fire while Olivia explored the single room. Like his home, it was simple but well-maintained, with a bed, table, and basic supplies. Used to be a prospector's cabin, Elijah explained, lighting a lantern. I found it abandoned years ago, fixed it up as a hunting lodge. It's perfect, Olivia said, warming her hands by the fire. How long will we stay? Few days at least, until we hear from the sheriff. He rummaged through supplies, producing dried meat and beans. Not exactly fine dining, but it'll keep us going. They ate in companionable silence, exhaustion settling over them. Olivia found herself studying Elijah again, wondering about the man behind the stoic exterior. Why did you help me? She asked finally. You could have walked away in the saloon. None of this concerned you. Elijah considered her question, his eyes reflecting the firelight. I've seen what happens when good people look the other way. This territory's filling up with men like Thorne, men who take what they want because no one stops them. He poked at the fire. Besides, I know what it's like to search for answers. Couldn't let you do it alone. Thank you, she said simply. Not just for helping, but for believing me about Edward. Get some rest, he replied, uncomfortable with her gratitude. You take the bed, I'll keep watch. You need sleep too, she protested. I'll wake you for second watch, he promised. Used to riding night herd, few hours is all I need. Olivia was too tired to argue further. She removed her boots and outer garments, slipping under the blankets in her chemise and petticoat. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her as she listened to Elijah moving quietly around the cabin, checking windows and doors before settling into a chair near the fire. She woke to pre-dawn light and the scent of coffee. Elijah stood by the window, rifle ready, watching the approach to the cabin. You didn't wake me, she accused softly, sitting up. He glanced over, a half-smile lifting one corner of his mouth. You needed the rest more than I did. Olivia rose, quickly donning her clothes. What's our plan for today? Lay low. I'll check the trail markers, Samuel, and I established he'll leave word if there's news. He poured coffee into a tin cup, handing it to her. After that, we wait. The day passed slowly. Elijah taught Olivia how to set snares for rabbits, and she surprised him with her aptitude. They gathered berries and edible plants, working together with an ease that belied their short acquaintance. By late afternoon, they had prepared a stew that bubbled promisingly over the fire. Olivia sat cross-legged, mending a tear in her riding skirt while Elijah cleaned his revolver nearby. You're not what I expected, he said suddenly. She looked up, needle poised mid-stitch. What did you expect? Helpless Eastern lady fainted at the first sign of trouble. His eyes crinkled at the corners. Instead, you ride like a cavalry scout and set snares better than most mountain men I know. Olivia laughed. My father believed women should be self-sufficient. Mother was scandalized, but he taught me and Edward the same skills. Her smile faded. After they died in the ferry accident, those skills helped me survive. I'm sorry, Elijah said, about your parents. It was 5 years ago. Edward became my guardian, though I was nearly of age. She resumed her stitching. When he decided to take the surveyor position out west, I managed our affairs in Boston. We wrote weekly until. Her voice caught. Elijah set aside his gun and moved to sit beside her. We'll find what happened to him, Olivia, I promise you that. It was the first time he'd used her given name, and something in his voice made her look up. The intensity in his gaze stirred something deep within her, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then a bird called outside, breaking the spell, and Elijah stood abruptly. I should check those trail markers before dark, he said, reaching for his hat. Alone in the cabin, Olivia tried to make sense of her feelings. She had known Elijah Wade barely 2 days, yet she felt connected to him in ways she couldn't explain. Perhaps it was the danger they'd faced together, or his unwavering support of her search. Whatever the reason, she could no longer deny her growing attraction to the quiet cowboy. When he returned an hour later, his expression was grim. Samuel left word. Thorne's men attacked the sheriff on the road to Clearwater. He was wounded but got away with the journal. Federal marshal is on his way, but it'll be days before he arrives. And my brother. Olivia asked, her heart in her throat. Nothing definite, but Samuel heard rumors of a prisoner at Thorne's ranch. Could be Edward, could be someone else. He sat heavily at the table. Either way, we're stuck here until it's safe. Days stretched into a week. They fell into a routine hunting, gathering, maintaining the cabin. Elijah taught Olivia to shoot his spare revolver, impressed by her steady hand and quick learning. In turn, she shared stories of Boston and her life before coming west. Each night they talked by the fire, the space between them gradually diminishing. Olivia learned about Elijah's past, his time as an Army scout during the Indian Wars, his failed attempt at ranching in Colorado, his dream of someday having a horse farm of his own. What about you? He asked one evening as they watched the flames dance. What dreams brought Olivia Parker west, besides finding her brother? She considered the question. Freedom, I suppose. In Boston, my life was prescribed whom to marry, how to behave, what to think. Out here. She gestured to the vast wilderness beyond the cabin walls. Out here I can breathe, I can be myself. And who is that? Elijah asked softly. The real Olivia Parker, she met his gaze, something vulnerable in her eyes. I'm still discovering her. The 8th day brought rain, a steady, soaking downpour that confined them to the cabin. By afternoon, the close quarters had created a tension neither could ignore. They circled each other carefully, conversations stilted where they had been easy before. Olivia stood at the window, watching sheets of rain cascade down the mountainside. I've been thinking about what happens after, she said quietly. If we find Edward alive, or if… She couldn't finish the thought. What do you want to happen? Elijah asked, his voice low. She turned to face him. He stood near the fire, the flames casting his features in warm light and shadow. I don't know if I can go back to Boston. It doesn't feel like home anymore. And where does feel like home? His question hung in the air between them. Olivia took a step toward him, then another. I'm beginning to think home isn't a place at all. Maybe it's a feeling, a person. Elijah closed the distance between them, his hand coming up to trace the curve of her cheek. Olivia, he murmured, her name a question and an answer all at once. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question asked and answered in the press of lips. The second was deeper, years of loneliness and longing poured into a single moment of connection. When they finally parted, Elijah rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since I first saw you in that saloon, he admitted. Olivia smiled, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw, even covered in sawdust and terrified, especially then. His thumb brushed her lower lip. You were the bravest thing I'd ever seen. Their third kiss ignited something neither could control. Hands explored, breaths mingled, and the storm outside was nothing compared to the tempest within the cabin walls. Clothing was discarded piece by piece, each new revelation of skin met with reverent touches and whispered endearments. Elijah laid her on the bed with a gentleness that brought tears to her eyes. Are you certain? He asked, hovering above her. In answer, Olivia pulled him down to her, her body arching to meet his. They moved together, finding a rhythm as old as time itself, each giving and taking in equal measure until pleasure crested and broke over them like a wave. Afterward they lay entwined, the sound of rain on the roof a lullaby. Elijah traced patterns on her bare shoulder, his expression thoughtful. What are you thinking? Olivia asked, pressing a kiss to his chest. That I never expected to find you. His arms tightened around her. That I'd face 1,000 thorns to keep you safe. She propped herself up to look into his eyes. Promise me something, Elijah. Whatever we discover about Edward, promise we'll face it together. I promise. He sealed his vow with a kiss. I'll be there for every sunrise and every supper, the cowboy said as he pulled them close. Every storm and every clear sky, as long as you'll have me. Olivia's heart swelled with a happiness she'd thought forever beyond her reach. I'll hold you to that, cowboy. Dawn broke clear after the storm, sunlight streaming through the cabin window. They woke tangled together, shy smiles and tender touches confirming that the night's passion had been no dream. Elijah rose first, building up the fire while Olivia watched him move about the cabin. The easy confidence of his bare-chested form stirred her desire anew. Come back to bed, she suggested, her voice husky. He grinned, about to comply when a bird call, 3 notes, distinctly patterned, sounded outside. Samuel, Elijah said, instantly alert. He grabbed his shirt and gun, moving to the window cautiously. Stay inside. Olivia dressed quickly as Elijah stepped onto the porch. She heard low voices, then Samuel's distinctive laugh. Relief flooded her and she joined them outside. Samuel's weathered face split into a knowing grin when he saw her. Morning, Miss Parker. Hope I ain't interrupting nothing. Olivia blushed but lifted her chin. What news, Mr. Blackwood? Federal marshal arrived yesterday with 12 deputies, Samuel reported. They're serving papers on Thorne as we speak. Sheriff's recovering nicely, and your brother's journal provided all the evidence they needed. Hope blazed in Olivia's chest. And Edward, any word? Samuel's expression sobered. That's the other reason I came. They found a man being held at Thorne's ranch. Been there for months, according to the foreman who turned on Thorne. Can't say for certain it's your brother, but… We need to go, Olivia said, already moving toward the horses. Wait, Elijah caught her arm. Thorne's men are still out there. We need to be careful, Samuel nodded. Marshall's sending an escort. They'll meet us at the lightning-struck pine by noon. The wait was excruciating. Olivia paced the cabin, unable to sit still, while Elijah gathered their few belongings. By the time they reached the meeting point, she was nearly frantic with anticipation and dread. The marshal's men, 4 hard-faced deputies, led them down from the mountains by a circuitous route. As they approached Redemption Creek, Olivia's stomach knotted with anxiety. The prisoner was taken to Doc Miller's house, one deputy explained. He was in bad shape, beaten, half-starved. Doc's been tending him since yesterday. The doctor's house sat on the edge of town, a neat white building with green shutters. Olivia dismounted before Elijah could help her, rushing up the steps. She hesitated at the door, suddenly afraid of what she might find. Elijah's hand settled warm and steady on her shoulder. Together, he reminded her. Inside, they were met by a balding man with kind eyes and a worried frown. "Miss Parker, I'm Dr. Miller. Your brother's awake but weak. He's been asking for you." "Is he?" Olivia couldn't finish the question. "He'll recover," the doctor assured her. "With time and care. This way." He led them to a small bedroom where a gaunt figure lay propped against pillows. Olivia would have scarcely recognized him. His face was bruised, his formerly robust frame wasted by months of deprivation. But when he turned toward the door, Edward Parker's eyes lit with recognition. "Livy," his voice was a rasp. "Is it really you?" Olivia flew to his bedside, tears streaming down her face as she carefully embraced her brother. "Edward, oh thank God, how did you find me?" he asked weakly. "I never stopped looking," she said, holding his frail hand between hers. "And I had help." She turned to Elijah, who stood respectfully by the door. "This is Elijah Wade. He saved my life and helped me discover what happened to you." Edward's gaze shifted to Elijah. "Then I owe you a debt I can never repay, sir." Elijah shook his head. "Your sister is the bravest woman I've ever met. I just followed her lead." The doctor stepped forward. "He needs rest now. You can return in the morning." Reluctantly, Olivia kissed her brother's forehead. "I'll be back at first light, I promise." Outside, she sagged against Elijah, emotions overwhelming her. "He's alive," she whispered. "After all this time." Elijah held her steady. "You found him, Olivia. You never gave up." "We found him," she corrected, looking up into his storm-gray eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you." They stayed at the hotel in town, the threat from Thorne neutralized by his arrest and the federal presence. The next days were a blur of activity, Edward growing stronger, giving his testimony to the marshal, the gradual piecing together of all that had happened. Thorne had discovered Edward's survey results and attempted to bribe him to falsify his report. When Edward refused, Thorne had him beaten and imprisoned at his remote ranch house, intending to kill him once the railroad plans were finalized. Only the loyalty of a ranch hand who smuggled food to the prisoner had kept Edward alive. What happens now? Elijah asked one evening as they walked along the creek that gave the town its name. A week had passed, and Edward was recovering at the doctor's house, gaining strength daily. Olivia stopped, turning to face him. "Edward wants to return to Boston once he's well enough to travel." Something flickered in Elijah's eyes, a shadow of loss quickly masked. "Of course, your life is there." "No," she said firmly, taking his hands in hers. "My life is where I choose it to be. Edward understands that." Hope dawned on Elijah's face. "And where do you choose, Olivia Parker?" "Here." She stepped closer. "With you, if you'll have me." His answer was a kiss that left no doubt, deep and thorough and full of promise. When they finally parted, breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I'll build you a proper house," he vowed, "with a garden and room for children." "It won't be fancy like Boston." "I don't want fancy," she interrupted. "I want you. I want sunrises and suppers and everything in between." The light in his eyes was worth every hardship, every moment of fear she had endured. "I love you, Elijah Wade," she whispered. "My cowboy, my home." "And I love you, Olivia Parker, more than I have words to say." 3 months later, they stood hand in hand on the porch of their new home. The small ranch house overlooked a valley where Elijah's horses grazed, the beginning of the breeding farm he'd always dreamed of establishing. Edward, fully recovered and heading back east the following day, raised a glass and toast to new beginnings," he said, smiling at his sister and her husband, "and to finding home where you least expect it." Olivia leaned into Elijah's embrace, his arm warm and secure around her waist. "To home," she echoed, her heart full to bursting. Later, as twilight painted the sky in shades of lavender and gold, they stood alone on the porch. Elijah pulled her close, his lips brushing her temple. "Happy?" he asked. "Beyond words," she answered truthfully. 6 months ago, she could never have imagined this life, this love that had blossomed amid danger and uncertainty. Yet she couldn't imagine any other path now. "I was thinking," Elijah said, his hand settling protectively over her stomach where their first child grew, still their secret for a few more weeks. "About names," Olivia smiled up at him. "Already, we have months yet to decide. I know, but I was thinking. If it's a boy, maybe we could call him Edward, after your brother who brought you to me." Tears of happiness pricked her eyes. "And if it's a girl," Elijah considered, "Hope, because that's what you never lost, what led you here." "Edward or Hope," she agreed, kissing him softly. "Perfect either way." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Elijah kept his promise, holding her close as they watched day fade to night, certain that whatever sunrise followed, they would face it together. 2 years later, the ranch had flourished beyond their expectations. Elijah's breeding program had produced horses sought after throughout the territory, and Olivia had established a small but successful business training young ladies in riding and self-defense skills she considered essential for frontier life. Their son, little Eddie, had his father's storm-gray eyes and his mother's determination. At 18 months, he was already trying to climb onto the gentle ponies his father raised, much to Olivia's mixture of pride and terror. "He's going to break his neck before he's 2, she fretted, watching Elijah supervise the toddler's careful seat on a patient mare. "He's a natural," Elijah countered proudly, "just like his mama." Life had settled into a rhythm of work and joy, the days marked by small milestones: Eddie's first words, the completion of the new barn, letters from Edward describing his engagement to a Boston socialite who, surprisingly, wished to visit the West. "We should host the wedding here," Olivia suggested one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. "Edward says Marguerite is fascinated by frontier life. Imagine her face when she sees what I've built here with you." Elijah chuckled, pulling her onto his lap. "From Boston society to Wyoming dust. Think she'll survive? If she loves Edward even half as much as I love you, she'll thrive." Olivia settled against his chest, content. "We should invite Samuel to stay for the winter. He's getting too old to be alone in that cabin when the snow comes." "Already asked him," Elijah confirmed. "He's moving into the bunkhouse next month, says he wants to teach Eddie how to track before the boy can properly walk." Olivia laughed. "Between you and Samuel, our son will be a proper frontiersman before he's out of short pants." Elijah's hand caressed her back in slow circles. "Would that be so terrible?" "No," she admitted. "Not terrible at all." The future stretched before them, bright with possibility. There would be more children, Olivia was certain, a houseful of them, if Elijah had his way. More challenges too, no doubt, but nothing they couldn't face together. As twilight deepened to dusk, Elijah rose, lifting her effortlessly in his arms. "What are you doing?" she laughed. "Taking my wife to bed," he replied with a grin that still made her heart race. "Eddie's asleep, the horses are settled, and I intend to make the most of our peace and quiet." Later, as they lay entwined in the darkness, Olivia traced the scar on Elijah's shoulder, a reminder of a bullet he'd taken protecting her from one of Thorne's men during that fateful week. "Any regrets?" she asked softly. Elijah caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "About you? Never, not for a single moment. Even when I burnt the biscuits so badly we had to throw out the pan," he chuckled. "Even then. Or when I insisted we paint the parlor yellow and it turned out the color of a sick canary. I've grown fond of that yellow," he insisted, though they both knew it was a polite fiction. Olivia propped herself up on one elbow, suddenly serious. "I mean it, Elijah. You could have had an easier life with a frontier-born woman who knew how to render lard and make soap from scratch." His expression softened in the moonlight filtering through the window. "I didn't want easier, I wanted you, still do, always will." He pulled her down for a kiss that deepened until they were both breathless. "Besides, you make up for the biscuits in other ways." "Oh," she teased, pressing closer. "What ways might those be, Mr. Wade?" His hands slid down her body with practiced skill. "Allow me to demonstrate, Mrs. Wade." Outside their window, the vast Wyoming sky sparkled with stars, a silent witness to the love that had blossomed against all odds in the wild frontier. From desperate beginnings in a chaotic saloon to the peaceful sanctuary of their ranch, Olivia and Elijah had forged a bond that would endure through whatever challenges life presented. And when morning came, as it always did, they would face it together just as Elijah had promised that night in the mountain cabin, when a cowboy's vow of sunrise and supper had changed their lives forever.